This is a personal story about Asmo the dog. Poor little Asmo didn't do well with children. He had lived happily for about 9 years with our daughter in law, well behaved and loved. Then one day a baby showed up and the stress built. And in that time, eventually, that stress built up so much that he nipped at our grandson. In fact, one day he actually bit the cheek of our grandson. And our dear, dear daughter in law, she was so upset. She called us in tears. But she knew she had to make the hard call and surrender Asmo for fear he would do greater harm to her baby. And of course, we completely understood. And without a hiccup, we brought Asmo home to live with us. Now, in time, he did calm down and began to enjoy life. There was no stress of a little kid around. Some breeds are just not attuned to being around little kids, and he certainly hadn't been around little children. So while he was living here, he began to become more relaxed. He wasn't shaken anymore, and he had a great spring in his step. He enjoyed being with us on the front porch, loved sitting on the swing, observing the passersby. He would begin to woof underneath his breath, as some dogs do. He was a good boy for us. Our Boston Terrier, however, was a tad jealous, but even in time, she grew to follow him around. There is no question he lived out his years here, spoiled and happy. By January of this year, he began a persistent cough, and although I'm an energy healer, there could be many things causing this issue, and I needed to find out exactly what was the cause. The diagnosis: congestive heart failure. He had about 2 weeks, although our vet was quite optimistic. And he said, he may have up to, 6 months. But I knew it was not as much. I even looked it up. And so I was stunned. And so he was happy and a lively old man. So I just took him home. And as long as he was a happy and lively old man, because by this time he was 98 in people years, I thought, we'll just keep him until we can't. And so I worked with him energetically. And the miraculous thing, or part of the miracle here, was that the cough disappeared. So he wasn't gagging and coughing anymore. But up until the other day, April 10th of this year, 2024, Asmo began to decline his food. His his breathing became a little bit more labored. He even declined most of his favorite treats. And yes, even people food. He turned his nose up to steak and bacon. Oh, I pleaded with Asmo, please eat. I can't keep you alive if you don't eat, and I can't certainly give you your medicine if you don't eat. One of the things that the vet offered us just to keep him comfortable was a diuretic. But he was reluctant to taking food. And without that, I was unable to hide his medication in it. So I pled with him, please eat, please drink. But he wasn't struggling. He would wag his tail and look at me with those big brown eyes. And I'm like, but if you don't eat, I'm going to have to become your executioner. That is the worst part of having our fur babies, is having to make that call. That call that you have to put them down so they don't suffer. And you weigh out, you know, am I harming you by putting you down? Ugh, that's the worst part of it. But they give you so many years of joy. So it's, even though it's a few hours or days or a month of going through a challenging time, the benefit of what they give you or what you give them, this energy exchange, is well worth it. Naturally, I tuned into Asmo and I said, sweet boy, what do you want? What can I do for you? And a flood of information came in, almost like a two-way conversation. And I said, do you want me to hold you? No. And I felt like he was too sensitive. Like everything became heightened for him. And the irony, and when I got that, I began to notice that his favorite sleeping spot he would not get in. He chose to lay someplace else. And then I said, "Do you want me to pet you?" "Yes, I would enjoy you petting me." Of course, we gave several of those. And then I said, "Is there any place that you want to go?" And the back deck and the front porch swing were the two go-tos that I felt he wanted to be in. Now, I live in Indiana, and the weather in Indiana in April can be great or winterish. But the last 2 days of his life, the weather broke and we had summer warmth, and it was upon us. The wind was calm and gentle, and he enjoyed laying on the back deck, soaking up the sun to warm his old bones, sniffing the air. And every time I would talk to him, he would wag his tail with vigorous. He had a sparkle in his eye. He was in a complete relaxed state. I kept watching his breathing. It was labored, but he didn't seem uncomfortable by it. It wasn't severely labored, but it had shifted and changed. I was filled both with joy and a vision of horror, knowing his time was close, and I could not allow him to suffer. I called the vet in hopes that they could give him some stimulant for his appetite and reduce his fluids by giving him an injection of some kind. But they told me they could not get him in till the next Monday. Over a week. I took down their emergency numbers because I knew he didn't have long. So I tuned into him again and I said, "Asmo, when will you transition? Tell me so I'm prepared." And he told me his little higher self said tomorrow between 3 and 4 p.m. But it was interesting. I got a call back almost instantly when I got the 4 p.m. And I got a call back from the vet, and she said, "We had a cancellation. Could you bring Asmo in tomorrow at 4?" Well, absolutely, I could bring him in at 4. Maybe there was time. Maybe I could get him stimulated between this and doing energy healing. I could reverse it. And I knew in my heart I couldn't reverse it. Asmo the dog is 14 years old, 98 in dog years. And apart from a little difficulty breathing in the last hours, he had had a wonderful life. So through the whole night, I could barely sleep, worried if I fell asleep, would he suffer? Would he suddenly get worse? But every time I woke up and checked on him, he was resting peacefully. His breathing hadn't changed, and I didn't want to wake him up. The next day, we got up. He refused food again. He drank a little. By noon, I thought I needed to get him to the front porch swing. And there we set up, and that's where we were for the next 3.5 hours. My sister came to me about 3:30, and then she was watching him, and we could see his breathing slow. And she said, "We should probably go now." And it was 3:45. So she picked him up, and she was going to drive. And so she told me to get in the passenger seat, and I could hold him while we go there. And so I did. And I kept petting him, and I kept holding his head, and I looking in his eyes, and he would look up at me with those eyes, and I could see him slipping. And I said, "It's okay, baby. We love you. Everything's going to be fine." And of course, in my mind, I was screaming, "Please don't make me be your executioner," because that's the selfish side of me. I was really struggling with that. To tell you otherwise would be fooling myself. We got to the vets pretty quickly, and we got into the back room quickly. The vet's office was amazing. Now, our vet, the one who saw Asmo back in January, had to have a heart transplant himself. And his young sister, also a vet, was there to run his business. And she stopped in, she stopped what she was doing, and she came into the room immediately and looked at him. And she said, "We can give him some medication that will help him rally. It might give you a few hours, a day or two at best. Will he still suffer?" Yes, he will still suffer trying to grab a breath. And she had seen his x rays from January, and she was amazed. She goes, "How is he even still with you? He should have been gone within 3 to 4 weeks after that visit, after what she saw on his x ray." She goes, "This is a miracle that he's lasted until April." There was my next my next miracle there that I understood. My first miracle was he wasn't suffering much. The weather had been awful the day before or the weeks leading up. We had a break in the weather, and for the 2 last days of his life, I had him outside in his 2 favorite places. And then I learned the hour of his death, and I even asked, "Will I have to give him your night-night juice?" And I was told no. But I thought, well, I got that wrong because here we are and he's still suffering. And so she goes, "Whenever you are ready, we can go ahead and give him the night-night juice." But as I looked at him, he was struggling for air. And I said, "Okay, it's time. I don't want him to struggle anymore. If all I can give him are a few hours and the hours he has left is painful and struggling to breathe, go ahead." And it was really hard. I'm sorry, this just happened yesterday. So let me calm myself. Anyway, he was looking up at me. My sister had him. I had my hands cupping his face. His eyes were locked onto mine. And I said, "You can run across the rainbow bridge now if you want. It's okay to go to the rainbow." And so the vet technician asked, "Are you ready for me to give his injection?" And I said, "No, he's going now." And he took his last breath. It was a beautiful moment and a gift that Asmo the dog gave me. He took his last breath without me having to be his executioner. Now, the next miracle took place, as if we hadn't had a series of miracles up until this point. My husband was traveling, and he knew I had a vet appointment at 4 p.m., and he was talking to Asmo out loud as he was driving, and he looked out to his left at 4:05 p.m. The moment when Asmo the dog took his last breath at 4:05 p.m. and he saw a rainbow. And my husband sent me the text of a rainbow in the last moments after Asmo took his last breath. Folks, this was an amazing series of miracles, and they are available to you too. And sometimes the miracles are not what we want, but that doesn't mean they are not beautiful and wonderful and have a meaning beyond anything. And no, I could not save his life. He was 14 years old, 98 in dog years, and he had been good and healthy up until the last couple of days. His suffering had been eased through energy healing. His coughing stopped, which was, well, she was like, "Well, that's unheard of." And I know that. because I looked it up when he stopped coughing. And he was springing through the house like Pepe Le Pew up until last week. You could not tell the dog was sick. So the energy healing eased his suffering. Could it stop the inevitable? No. But he was calm and not in any pain until the last few hours, the last few minutes. And that is a miracle. The miracle of consciousness is that he could talk to me, and your pets can talk to you. This doesn't begin or end with me, and the message I give to all of you who have your fur babies. You can speak with your pet. You are very bonded. There's an energy exchange between you. And if you have trouble understanding what they're trying to tell you, reach out to me. And maybe you can experience some miracles yourself, saving their lives or giving them something that they need, whatever it is. But I had to share my own personal experience of the miracle I had with my adopted fur baby, Asmo, or as I always called him, Asmo the dog. Please know you have the ability to communicate with your animals. You don't have to go to an animal communicator. Reach out if you need help. I'm here if you want. You can find me at sallyknop.com. For that, look for rainbows in the sky. It means something to somebody, somewhere, and probably to you too. Bye for now.